really delighted to present the professionals from the McKinsey company. And here I'd like to introduce Andreas and David. Andreas is an international consultant based in Austria. He is an experienced entrepreneur. Before joining McKinsey, he very successfully established 2 startups in machine learning and advanced analytics. And he is a top management consulting in innovation, digitalization, and technology. And his colleagues, David Kingsam, he's a client director based in Hungary, McKinsey, Hungary, and he is the director of the Enterprise Agility Center. He is a very experienced banker and consultant. Before joining McKinsey 5 years ago, he worked for almost 10 years in the Central European banks. He supports the worldwide international companies to implement the agility programs and the changes in the way of doing things in such so that the companies can serve the customer needs more quicker and faster and with a higher quality. So I'm delighted to give the floor to Andreas and David.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
This was one of the best introductions I think we ever get. Very, very, very cool. So we can basically jump over the personal introductions. Really very delighted to be here together with David.
Yes, welcome. Yes.
Thank you very much. A great setup, basically, really inspirational speaks also and speakers on coaching. Fantastic. I think our topic will match very good into kind of this whole spirit of the conference. Basically, we would like to talk about enterprise agility. And we deeply believe that this topic is relevant for CHROs, for CEOs, for the whole organization. The world outside is changing in phenomenal speed and with a phenomenal pace. And we see more and more that organizations want to find ways to cope kind of with these changes. And we are not talking now about like small changes here and there. We are really talking about fundamentally rethink how an organization can operate. And basically in the next minutes, we would like to give you a perspective on the topic. We prepared some slides so that we focus also specifically on human resources and HR topics during an agile transformation. We prepared a small video so to make it a little bit also up to life. What is an agile transformation looking like if you see it in an organization? And we would like to close then the session with Q&As and are happy, hopefully, to answer many of the urgent questions that are coming up. I'm sharing now my screen. Do you see the shared screen?
I see that, but I think we are on the same connection.
Perfect.
So maybe we need confirmation from the studio as well.
Cool.
Yes.
Perfect. So basically, what are we trying to solve? If you think, you know, there is more and more change in the world going on. Digitalization is in most of the organizations. Most people around the world have a smartphone, use the smartphone. So kind of this is an increase in speed and an increase in change that we've never seen before. Since roughly, unfortunately, 1.5 years, we have another change coming over the world. It's the COVID crisis, which fundamentally also changes how people work. Work at home for many organizations 2 years ago, something that they never experienced, is now the new normal somehow. We see automation opportunities. In organizations, we see automation in products. So this is also a topic that accelerates the change going forward. Also ecosystem and partnerships. The biggest companies nowadays are basically ecosystem companies, be it Airbnb, who basically never owns a kind of a hotel, but they are the biggest renter of hotel rooms among the world. Be it Uber, which is one of the biggest providers of mobility around the world, which doesn't own a single car. Those kind of new business models were all introduced within the last few years, which brings me to the next point, new business models and attackers. So traditional organizations get somehow challenged by new digital or also non-digital attackers. The demand is changing. Also, customers are more and more informed about what they want and which organization provides the service or the product that they want. Analytics and big data is changing the world, and especially also how organizations see the customers. More and more organizations get basically insights from more and more data that is generated and that is available through digital channels, but also through non-digital channels. We have an omni-channel experience. So customers expect from organizations to have a digital interaction touch point, to have a non-digital touch point, to have all those different touch points somehow coming together and creating the same great experience for me as a customer. And finally, what also changes, not only on the customer, but also within the organization, is that more and more employees are seeking purpose in what they do in their daily life. And now it's a good question. We talk now about lots of things that are going either outside or inside organizations. Quite some challenges coming up. What needs to happen in order to cope with kind of those challenges? What moves the needle of an organization to be successful in this kind of changing environment? And what we know is what doesn't move the needle. So introducing Scrum as an agile framework in some teams here and there in the organization doesn't move the needle. Buying bean bags or table soccer tables for your employees doesn't move the needle most probably. Also leadership sessions here and there don't move the needle at all. Hiring some gurus that will help your organization to change and become better, most probably similar to the post-it notes, won't move the needle. So all those surface level changes won't move the needle, won't move the performance of your organization. What we believe and what we see in more and more clients happen is a fundamental switch in the paradigm from seeing the organization as a machine with multiple separate parts that work together somehow and have to be steered by a CEO top down. We see a shift towards an organism, hundreds of small teams, cross-functional teams that have all the skills they need in order to provide a service or a product to the customer, who understand the customer, who are working together with the customer. So this is kind of a fundamental shift in how organizations are operating, and also what's the understanding of an organization. So the organization is not like in classic that you have multiple layers, escalation paths, where if you can't solve the problem, you just escalate it and somebody in top management will resolve it. Only the CEO takes on basically the end-to-end view. Hundreds of projects and products somehow floating around in the organization, but nobody feels really responsible. All those things worked in the past decades because the change was not that fast, but especially within the last 10, 20, 25 years, the world changed, given also the digitalization in a speed that was never seen before, and therefore also the fundamental operating model of how organizations operate have to change in order to cope with it. So to have small teams staffed and empowered to get things really done, to ship value to the customer. Basically have, instead of top-down prioritization, just giving guardrails, the what, and the teams figuring out the how to deliver the value to our customers. And to be very honest, everyone has tasted it already, especially during COVID. What we see in the different organizations worldwide is that organizations implemented already here and there some elements, kind of those new paradigm of those small, high-performing teams. However, kind of this holistic change approach, this holistic perspective on how to do it is something that not all organizations have done yet. But let's come maybe to the next page. What we see is that more and more companies start on this journey to embark to become really an enterprise agile organization. It started somehow with ING in banking, Sberbank, Santander, and moved a little bit up to until insurance. Then somehow telecom started. There is a Spark in New Zealand, a telecom that went fully agile. New Day in Denmark went fully agile. Also now consumer and pharma started. And there are a bunch of other industries from aviation down to mining that are starting now on this journey towards full enterprise agility. And they are competing going forward with basically born natives or native digital or native agiles, like the Amazons from these times, like the Google, Spotify, and Netflix from these times. So kind of it's important that the organizations rethink their operating model to compete basically with the native agiles and native digitals going forward. The good thing is, if organizations take this journey seriously and if they embark on this journey, they also will get a reward for it. So we did a survey among hundreds of agile transformations worldwide in the different industries. And there you see basically a summary of what are the typical rewards, what are the typical improvements, the benefits that you get out of an agile transformation if done properly. You are not only increasing your customer centricity, but also within the organization, you increase your employee engagement. So you have more people, better talent within the organization available to serve the clients and the customers even better. You increase your operational performance, because due to those small cross-functional teams that all have the required skills within the team to deliver the value to the customers, you reduce handovers. So on the one hand, you get a better efficiency and a higher operational performance by reducing handovers and supporting roles. And you increase also the speed. So you can react much faster to changes in the environment, be it COVID or be it market changes, because the customer needs or the customer demands is changing. Also, innovation is a benefit that comes naturally from an enterprise agile transformation or from an enterprise agile organization, where you can keep up with the new incumbents, with the new entry companies within your industry. And also the FTE productivity starts. So reducing handovers, reducing support functions, focusing on the real doers in your organization that deliver value to the customers and that are producing products and services to the customers will increase the productivity of FTEs. And basically now the question is how to realize those benefits. And we basically did a survey with hundreds of transformations, and we analyzed what are the building blocks to really fundamentally shift your operating model towards enterprise agility. And we found out that basically those tiles among the elements of strategy, structure, process, people, and technology will help organizations to successfully transfer in this agile ways of working. And since we are now at an HR management conference, I would like to focus on one of those elements, the talent element, because this is specifically relevant for human resources. However, we have detailed material. We will also come at the end of our session to the detailed material that if you're interested in those topics, also in other elements like strategy or structure, that you can have a read on to better understand how to drive such a agile transformation. But let's focus now for the next 5 to 10 minutes on the talent model. And specifically, I would like to introduce kind of the Dreyfus model, which is a people model introduced by a professor, an American professor called Dreyfus, that works very well in the context of an agile organization. So basically, what is the story behind this Dreyfus model? And there is a little bit text to read, but I summarize it. So basically, there was an employee called John. And John had a team, so he had direct reports. John is a tech engineer in a company. And when there were layoffs happening in this organization, John was the only that was left within his team. So before he had some direct reports, and afterwards he was the only team member in his team, so to say. And the head of HR once went to John and asked him, you know, John, I hope to hire some help for you soon so that you get your team back. And the surprise answer from John was, please don't rush. I am happier now without a team. And that triggered something in the CHRO, thinking, okay, why John doesn't want to have a team? And basically, it turned out that the engineers that were in the team of John, that John has to supervise, were merely adequate. So instead of John as an engineer focusing on doing something, creating value for the customers, John spent lots of his time to coach, develop, and train other internal engineers, which was not the nature of John. He just wanted to become or be a great engineer, coding, delivering digital products in this example. And basically, this triggered kind of a discussion within Netflix on their talent philosophy. And they came up to say the best thing you as an organization can do for your employees is basically hire only A players to work alongside other A players. And this story basically was the starting point for Dreyfus, this American professor, to dig a little bit deeper, to analyze it. Is there something behind this philosophy of Netflix that we can analyze? And what he found out, and please don't be surprised of the next page, it's a little bit text heavy, but let's take it step by step. What he found out is basically the more expertise a person has, the higher the productivity. That's not really surprising. But what Dreyfus did then is to establish 5 levels from novice to expert. And he started to analyze the productivity levels of individual employees from novice to expert. And he found out if we take the productivity level of a novice as 1, that basically an advanced beginner has double the productivity, a competent employee has 4 times the productivity, and an expert and proficient individual even 8 times the productivity of a novice, which is quite interesting. So it's not linear, it's an exponential increase of productivity. And what Dreyfus then did even further, he was thinking of how can I measure Andreas and David's expert level? How do I know that David is an advanced beginner or competent? And what he found out is basically that you can measure or kind of measure and assess the maturity of an individual on observable behavior. That's quite interesting. Give you an example. If you go to school as an engineer and learn how to code, then most probably you are a novice. If you teach others in school how to code, you are maybe competent. And if you're flying to worldwide conferences as a speaker, then you're maybe or probably an expert. So based on these different observations of behavior of individuals, you can somehow quite nicely indicate if someone is a novice, advanced beginner, competent, proficient, or expert. And based on this, you kind of see then also the productivity. And now let's say you have 100 talents in your organization, 100 engineers. You did kind of this assessment based on the observable behavior, and you come up then basically with your organigram on how your talent is distributed among those 5 levels. And this is now the next page that I would like to discuss. Let's say you have 100 people, 45 of them would be novice, 35 would be advanced beginners, and so on and so forth. So you have a classical pyramid. You hire basically fresh from school or university, and then you develop them within your organization. This is the typical pyramid structure that many organizations face. If we calculate now the productivity, so 45 people with a productivity of 1, 35 people with a productivity of 2, and so on and so forth, you come up with the overall productivity of 235 headcounts. So 235 novice equivalents is your productivity of this pyramidal structure. Now let's take the other extreme. On the right-hand side, this is basically how Netflix is built up. Netflix hires only 4 or level 5 employees, and this is their composition. If I calculate now the overall productivity, 40 people are in the highest level with a productivity of 8, 60 people are in the second highest level also with a productivity 8, I get kind of 800 novice equivalents. So instead of 235, I have a productivity of 800 with the same workforce, which means there are now 2 possibilities. I can achieve the same productivity with a smaller headcount, or I achieve a higher productivity with the same headcount. And basically, this is one of the reasons why, for example, WhatsApp, the global messaging company WhatsApp, has roughly 50 to 60 engineers. It's fantastic if you think. Just 50 to 60 engineers are coding WhatsApp. And one of the main reasons is that they hire only A players to play among A players. Now we talk about Netflix and WhatsApp, and all those organizations are nice, but is it also feasible for, let's say, non-Netflix and Spotify and WhatsApp organizations? And for them, the right-hand side might not be feasible and might also not be kind of wished by the organization, because a big part of organization is also to develop their own people and to develop their own talent. And that's why this diamond shape basically could be a very attractive shape for many organizations out there, where they say, yes, we hire novices and also advanced beginners to develop them internally, but our goal is to have few experts that can train bulk of the people within the competent level, few experts who really drive our engineering and our talent. We have most of the people as competent as a kind of a trade-off between efficiency, so basically productivity and headcount. And we have also people that we internally develop. And what we see, that more and more organizations, specifically on agile transformations, start their HR transfer also towards the diamond shape. So they start with a pyramid shape and then transition over some months, some years into kind of a diamond shape. And therefore, an agile transformation is a good vehicle. On the one hand, it attracts people, it attracts talent from the market. Talented people want to work in agile environments. And on the other hand, also the agile operating model ensures that due to this small cross-functional setup, people automatically develop themselves, get cross skills, and become basically an advanced beginner and a competent individual. And I would like to close basically the PowerPoint presentation with a short video that shows you a little bit the different elements and the different tiles in action. The video is about Magyar Telekom's agile journey. You hear some of the leaders, some of the people there, how they perceived this agile journey and what were basically also the lessons learned. Therefore, I will just reshare my screen.
How to move power where information is.
Understanding my customer needs.
Give a chance for us to give an empowerment.
The community was always strong, but now it's even stronger.
If I want to formulate in one sentence what is Agile Magyar Telekom, what is my sentence, then the sentence is getting rid of the waste. While I believe that this is the most important thing to serve our customers in a superior way.
Reaction time, understanding my customer needs, and actually an optimistic and very positive attitude towards the world, towards their customers. I think these are the three things that I, as a customer, would look for in a company that is working in an agile mode.
So with the agile transformation, we became much more customer-centric, and we put in our focus the customer needs, and the go-to-market process became faster. And the customers reflected it back to us, and we achieved the number one position in customer satisfaction.
The essence of the new culture is definitely the values. The team spirit is definitely something which is very tangible, that how strong communities we have. The community was always strong, but now it's even stronger.
What I was also feeling before, but I got a big confirmation, and I think I was learning how to do it, how to move power where information is, how to move control where information is. In a big company, you usually end up in a setup or in a hierarchy where power is at the top and information is at the bottom. And there is a big gap or a big distance between the two. And it's vital to close that gap.
That was one of the biggest achievements that we experienced, that both units, the IT and the business, could work together, and it was a very flexible and very inspiring journey. And the second one, that we could define a common objective for this agile organization, and not only the objective, but also the key results were very important. And it brought a huge transparency to the organization, and because of the transparency, that also gave a chance for us to give an empowerment for the team.
So we all had to develop. I think number one for me in terms of development was to understand, learn, and start to practice how you are building goals for the organization.
Excellent collaboration, common goals, clear responsibility, and no more silos. These are the key things that I'm thinking of whenever I hear Agile.
This is also a leadership journey. Using the agile way of working is requiring a little bit different leadership style. So changing the leadership style is definitely a big change for the leadership team, and also the whole culture, how we open the culture, how we empower the people, and how we involve them into even bigger and bigger decisions. That's different. And honestly speaking, that was my own personal journey as well.
Fantastic. I hope this video gives kind of an impression of how an agile transformation could look like in reality. To be very honest, if you go through this journey, in reality, it makes even much more fun than just presented in the video, which brings me basically to the last point of the presentation. If you're now interested in the topic of an agile transformation, if you say, I want to learn more about kind of what does it mean to be agile, how do I get started, then we propose 3 things for you if you're interested. As said in the beginning, we published an article in May 2021 summarizing more than 2,000 responses of agile transformation. So one of the most comprehensive surveys ever done on agile transformations and enterprise agility, basically revealing a recipe on how to get it right. If you're interested, we can also send you our agile booklet with more informations on what does it mean and how does it work. Or you just reach out to David or myself, happy to answer questions, happy to get in contact if you want to have basically more information about the topic of enterprise agility. Thank you very much for listening in. And now I would close this the screen sharing and open maybe the Q&A session.
Thank you, Andreas. And then I think it leads us very nicely to the Q&A section. Let us know what's the best way to run it from the studio. What should be the order of the questions, or how should we go about them? Because maybe I can start answering to the first one, and in the meantime, please let us know how to run the rest of the session. So during this video, we received a question. Sorry? Did the studio?
Andreas, David, thank you.
Oh,
yes. Can you hear?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, now yes.
Yes, yes. So thank you very much for very interesting presentation. And in this regard, my question is, how wide is used and extended in Central Europe the enterprise agility, and what is the context or how it is applicable to our region? What is your experience and view in this regard?
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very good question, and I think partly triggered by the video. It was a Central European company embarking on a journey, a telco company. I would say that it's very widespread compared to the other parts of the world, and I would say even that we are front runners when it comes to enterprise agility in the region. The movement or the waves, interestingly, it is done in waves, typically how enterprise agility spreads within a sector or within a specific geography. So it started in 2017. If you may remember the slide of Andreas, how the various industries started adopting it. It started in banking and telco. I would say that in almost all Central European countries, the largest players started a transformation between 2017 and now, these days. Some of them are already mature, like Deutsche Telekom Hungary, the one that you saw is a good example for that. And now we see emerging sectors like retail or pharma or some heavy industries companies to start adopting agility at scale. In terms of what are their aspirations or how big transformation journey they are embarking on, it's different. I would say, and again, this comes from our survey of companies that Andreas also shared in the end of the presentation, that like 2/3 of the companies are thinking of embarking on such a journey, but around 1/3 or 40% takes it seriously in a way of having all those transformations that Andreas showed, like this very deep enterprise agile level transformation. And this is valid for our region as well. So this is the same pattern what we see. And I am proud to say that out of the, I would say, 80 or 100 enterprise agile transformations that I personally saw in the last 4 years, around 10-15% was from the region, and they are very successful ones when it comes to impact on their employees, on their customers, and on their bottom line as well. So like and the reason for that is partly because companies are relatively a little bit smaller in Central Europe compared to Western Europe or the US. And in this sense, maybe a little bit easier to transform parts of their organizations. That may be one of the reasons for that. But I'm a very proud Central European in the enterprise agile space.
I see. Thank you very much. And now I was thinking, you mentioned banking industry and telecommunication industry, that they started the project of the agility transformations mostly. And now my question is about the difference of the implementation of these projects regarding the industries. Is there a difference or no? Are there any companies or industries where you would not recommend this operational model because that is not relevant to the context also?
Yes, thank you very much. Very good question as well. Yes, there is difference in the implementation of these agile principles, industry by industry. There are some patterns by industry, but I would say that the industry itself or the sector itself is not the main differentiator in terms of how we apply this model to the company's organization. It's more the type of work that this company is doing. So typically for change type of activities, this cross-functional model that Andreas presented works very well. When it comes to run activities, and mostly, for example, in manufacturing, agile as a principle is still applicable, but in a completely different way. Maybe it's a mix of lean and agile. So it's not kind of the traditional way of cross-functionally delivering in an empowered way new innovations or products. Is more about reducing waste and making the company or the manufacturing unit more efficient. So obviously there it's different. So I would say the more change a certain company or a certain sector, the more change activities it kind of has in the organization, the more applicable is this enterprise agile model that we presented to you. And where it cannot be applied, so I wouldn't say that there is literally any sector or any kind of specific activity where I don't see the applicability of some of those principles that we talked about.
I see. And if I am a leader of a big organization and I would like to implement the agile principles, what would ensure a successful implementation and what would I consider to focus on in order to avoid the failure?
Yes, also a very good and very relevant question. And please, Andreas, chip in here if I miss something, because it's a complex one. The most important component of a successful transformation is having the top team fully aligned and behind the transformation. So such a deep transformation along all those dimensions, like strategy, structure, people, process, technology. If you remember the slide of Andreas, such a deep transformation can be executed in an organization, all in case the top team, including the CEO, is sponsoring the initiative and is behind it. And I would say that, especially in the beginning, even they are kind of part of the transformation team who is designing this new way of working and this new, very deeply cultural change in the organization. So that's by far number one. The second one is definitely capability building. So make sure that at all levels of the organization, this fundamental mindset shift is kind of well known within the organization. And this capability building can start relatively early in the process. Again, such a deep change, such a completely new way of working that it's kind of very important from day one to understand at all levels of the organization. Andreas, you are muted, jump.
Absolutely. I can just echo what you said, David. And in parallel, I saw that there is a question coming from the Google chat. Thank you, Alina Malbas, on the question on, what are some lacks of agility? And this links very nicely to what David said. So if you really want to have an enterprise agile transformation, an enterprise agile operating model, you have to get it right holistically among structures, strategy, people, technology, and processes. And to the question, what are disadvantages or where do we see lacks? Based on my experience from really seeing transformations all over the world, is if the top team or the organization doesn't take it serious to holistically transform. So many organizations jump to the structure part. They say, okay, instead of having now a supervisor, we call the supervisor product owner, or we call the project manager product owner. Basically, we say, we instead of having now an org chart, we draw it in circles, but basically the underlying operating model, underlying organization is unchanged. And then on the one hand, you don't get out the impact and the benefits of agility, but then it turns out as a disadvantage because people are then fooled somehow. And this is something that organizations have to get right. So if you say, yes, we want to create responsibility with a team, we want to create transparency in a team, then you should take it seriously and don't tell your employees, yes, we make it responsible, but behind the door, basically nothing changes. And you just put now new name cards. Instead of a project manager, you call it product owner, or instead of a supervisor, you call Scrum Master or something like this. So this is completely linking to what David said. Top team has to commit to it, has to align it, has to drive it, and the organization has to take this journey from a holistic perspective.
Yes, maybe two very quick additions to that. One is that the transformation should have very, very clear aspirations from the very beginning. Why are we doing this? Andreas showed a few potential aspirations that others achieved with similar transformations. What we see, especially in Central Europe, that employee engagement, customer satisfaction, time to market, efficiency, these are kind of the key reasons why the top team embarks on such a journey. And the second addition would be reaching a level fast when the concept can be actually tested within the organization. And we intentionally don't even say tested. We use the word front runners to reach relatively early on in the process a stage when some units, some smaller parts of the organization can already start in this new way of working and learn by doing. And also the transformation team can learn on the way how agile is can be best implemented within the organization. So there is also the Big Bang approach when we are launching, or the organization is launching multiple units in the same time. Typically what we see that maybe it works better with the so-called front runners, with a few teams launched relatively early on in the transformation journey.
Yeah, I see. Thank you very much, Andreas and David, for this really insightful presentation. And I hope that these principles will join our region shortly, and the business will transform, because otherwise we don't have the success chances, yes, in order to follow our strategies and to ensure the great execution and results and happiness both for the employees and for the customers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.